And I'm very pleased to start off with Hanna Katherina Goebel. Hanna, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and to share my research with you. As I said, I'm a sociologist by training, also in cultural studies. I have training, and I did, or over the last years, I was a lot concerned with the question how architecture or buildings already built becomes regraduated according to their cultural inscriptions and according to the political controversies associated with particular buildings. And I did research in Berlin, basically, about 3 buildings, the former Palace of the Republic and the Café Moscow, 2 former post-socialist buildings, one which is gone now and the other one which has become reprogrammed. Today, because Astrid asked to present a paper I'm working on, I would like to show you the theoretical approach behind my idea to study architecture and buildings, and this is coming from practice theory. So my idea was, I don't know whether it was a good one, to introduce you practice theory really as an approach in the first minutes, and then try to build a bridge to what I study actually. And I wish to do so in order to discuss with you whether practice theory coming from sociology and other disciplines like geography or anthropology being concerned with practices, and to discuss with you whether this is a useful or a debatable approach to study the body in the city or the sensory engagement of the body. So I will start by going really into practice theory. Oh shit, yeah, sorry. I have my notes here and the PowerPoint here. So what is practice theory, and why or how at all to study and to theorize a practice? Really the basic framework is that this is a quite heterogeneous family of approaches coming, as I said, from sociology, but also from geography or cultural geography, also from anthropology, and from wherever they come from. They all assume that a practice is something that knows and explores the world materially, which means bodily and through things or built artifacts in the sense when speaking about the city. And this is really at odds with all approaches in the social sciences which assume that you can study the world through cognitive schemes or through semiotic text-based cultures. So they really try to think about the body in the material sense and about things also in the material sense, not in a text-based or a linguistic sense. The second thing is that a practice is something which happens or has a strong performance-based character. So something has to happen. It needs to be done. It's an activity, and it's something which happens in routine. So the reproduction of a practice, and I will come to one we can study exemplarily, is that it has a routine. And we can observe it publicly because of this routine character. So for instance, walking, we identify how we walk by seeing it publicly happen. And the third characteristic is that it is basically based on knowing how. I think Monica mentioned it before, the notion of tacit knowing or implicit knowing is really crucial in approaching a practice. It is not concerned with knowing that, meaning fact-based knowledge or rationalized knowledge. Of course, we do have that, and we can only walk because we talk about walking or because we know how to verbalize how we walk, but we have to do it, as I said. And the fourth thing is, at least in sociology, we conceive of a practice as the only unit of the social, meaning when you take, for instance, the city, The city is only held together as a city because of practices and because ensembles of practices, or some call it an assemblage of practices, order the world or the city in this sense. And I will give now an example of the city, which is car driving. I think we have mentioned it before as well. And here, and here, yeah, I mean, we are all known, all of us know these, or at least have sitting in a car, I would assume. And all of us know what happens in a car. And we all know that car driving as a practice is not something which we can see as a singularity, because car driving is already an ensemble of a lot of different practices: eating, talking on the phone, talking to your mom, talking to whoever is sitting next to you, taking medicine, whatever, doing office work, and so on. And this is a very good example, I think, to speak of ensembles of practices. So car driving in itself is already an assemblage of practices. What is really interesting in the car driving example, and this is the sociological point behind that, if you will, is we cannot speak of a body or a car involved in a practice. We have to think the other way around, that the practice somehow recruits or programs our bodies and the materials used in order to perform the practice as a practice. Meaning that our body is never something which we can see as a singularity or as a representation. It is always involved in practices, and it can always be more than one. We can have ourselves, or seeing ourselves, involved in the practice of car driving, but at the same time we can talk on the phone to a friend, and our body is completely differently involved, and different sensory registers are activated. So yeah, the same goes for the materials involved, but I can leave this out. So what I want to highlight with the practice theory is that you can study the sensory dimensions of the body quite nicely, I would say, because you can see the body in its multiplicity. It is always more than one, as I said, and you can see different sensory affective registers activated. What do I mean with affective? I think this is a very a very crucial difference, differentiating between affect and feeling and emotion. I would say that an affect is something that happens precognitively. As I said before, all practices, they really need the performance, the movement, the corporal involvement. And an affect, I would say, is an emotion which really touches the body and really does something to the body, which we cannot control by the mind, or which the mind might notice, but the body is doing something else. Yeah, so okay, I leave that for now and try to build a bridge to what I study at the moment, or what I have studied so far. I study, as I said, the revaluation of buildings in new architectural designs, for instance, the Café Moscow in Berlin. And I follow the body of the user in architectural designs and in buildings, and how different notions of the body and its affective or sensory capacities are activated. Yeah, and I think at this stage I won't go into detail here because the 10 minutes are already over. But I would like to highlight that you can never see a user with a body. You can only see a user either in the architectural design practices or in the actual movements through buildings and the experience of places. You rather have to see the multiplicity of sensory involvements, and this produces different users which have bodies and then have no bodies and then again bodies and so on. For me, with two colleagues in Hamburg, we are editing a special feature right now about the social engagement of architecture, or the social turn in architecture. And for me, this is really, at least from sociology, a perspective in order to engage with the social in architectural or building practices. By following and unpacking these different notions of the user and its bodily involvement. Okay, I have, oh shit, I forgot to go on here, sorry. Okay, something bad happened. I forgot to go on with the slides here. I will stop here, and this is, this is not to name drop, but to just give you literature in case you are interested in reading about these approaches coming from sociology. Okay, thank you.